So if you're trying to make sense of AI for your business, you're in the right place. All right, everyone, welcome back to Unlocking AI Value with Aaron and Jay. And so today's topic is about breaking down silos. So Jay, when we think about breaking down silos, what comes to mind here?
Well, many of us have been doing this and talking about it for many years, right? And the philosophy or the hypothesis is if we break down the silos of getting work done, we can get work done faster, right? Less organizational friction, right? So we don't have to do handoffs to 14 different groups and people and have component teams everywhere, right? And organize around products, platforms, and services. And the companies who have done this have actually reaped the rewards, right? So they were able to get the right things done faster, more cost effective, and more efficient, right? So that's the hypothesis.
Mhm.
So what I'm seeing now, and many people are writing about this, is that AI and implementing agentic AI and generative AI inside the organization is helping break down those silos. You still have to organize the people correctly, right? The AI is not going to do that for you, right? So doing things like product value streams, identifying your products and value streams and organizing around those is critical because now you can get the full benefits at a most cost-effective way of implementing your AI solutions, right? And organizing your teams around them, right? So sort of seeing that now. I'm seeing a lot of people writing about this, and the literature's out there and from universities and research that this is starting to break down those silos, and it's going to move to what we call an interconnected enterprise. So now the value streams will be interconnected. You still have functions within the company and everything, but you're still going to your functionality is going to cross these value streams, right? And you're going to be able to organize your teams around them, right? So I'm not saying that, accounting department's going to go away or the financial department's going to go away in a company, right? You still need those, right? Or marketing, right? However, you need this other layer, if you will, of how these organizations and teams are interconnected.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's interesting because for both of us coming from the IT and software world for a long time, the IT organization, when we think about silos, it's really even silos inside of IT,
Hmm.
right? Not even those bigger silos like of larger functional areas, but it would be like, testing versus developers versus database people versus business analysis. And, really those just functional job titles
Hmm.
were a lot of the silos we would think about in IT and just all the back and forth and handoffs and things like that we'd have to go through just to get software built or get a new technology implemented. But now those are starting to melt away pretty fast, right? Because with all these tools, people can start to share the responsibilities a lot more, and it's a lot less about the nuances of software development. It's more about how do we get the whole thing built end to end, and how to put all the pieces together, get them tested properly, and make sure everything works. And so I'm seeing a lot more collaboration there. And so I think the silos that are next, then, to your point, are the larger functional silos where, then it's more like, marketing versus finance versus HR, those kind of things. And I'm starting to see, like as you said, you know, there's still a need for those maybe functional areas overall to have some governance and some policies and rules around certain things that they're experts in. At the same time, though, you're starting to see those lines blur a lot.
Hmm.
One that comes to mind, I was talking to someone the other day, where you've got marketing people now just starting to take on ownership of actually building stuff for themselves instead of having
Hmm.
to, send a request to IT. And for a while there, maybe 6 months or a year ago, they were doing that, but unauthorized, right?
Hmm.
They were just sort of saying, "Hey, I got access to these tools. I can do it myself, and I just won't tell anyone I'm doing it."
Hmm.
Now they're actually saying it out loud and saying, "Hey, I'm going to do this, so I don't have to bother you. I'm going to take a first stab at it, or I'm going to solve this simple problem. Maybe it won't scale, but at least I can, get a first whack at it and get something that works. Then I can
Right.
start, having a better conversation about what I really wanted to do at an enterprise scale." And so, a lot of those kind of silos are starting to go away because there's no longer this black box of IT and all the magic that happens in there.
Right.
Everyone gets access to the magic now, which is really cool. So,
Right. And we're starting to see that the last company I was working for, organizationally, that's what we saw. So, AI fluency is not about using AI anymore. It's about knowing when to use AI and redesigning your processes and the organizational layers so you can get things done faster, smoother. But at the same time, I think we're going to have to be careful because we may create AI silos.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
that's the natural thing I think us humans have, right? We try to compartmentalize everything and organize everything. We have to have a taxonomy, right?
Mhm.
So I'm not saying we don't, but at the same time, I can start seeing that too. Now we have different layers of the organizations where now these people are AI fluent, so they could be in R&D or the commercial space, or I'm just going to mention some clinical trials or accounting or actuary and insurance companies, right? So they're going to build their own little AI world and solutions, everything. They'll have to have IT to productionize it and modernize it and operate it, right? And using service management because they're not going to want to do that, right?
Right.
So, but at the same time, if we can give them that and say, here, go try this, learn how to do Claude and how to set up some agents and test it, create a prototype, and now work with us to make it, mature so that we can run it into production, and then someone has to own it and be accountable for it, right? And do the service management. So I kind of see that happening. I don't think this is Jay Johnson's opinion. I don't think as many companies that's orchestrated. I think it's just happening, but there's no strategy behind it, right? And I think more and more companies are moving in, they're going, oh, we're seeing this happening all over the place. It's fragmented.
Yeah.
How do we pull this together and make it more cohesive and coherent?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, it's hard to avoid. I think, that there's so many opportunities. People are just, taking advantage of that, getting a little bit of leash to try some things. But, to the point of some of the other conversations we've had on here, strategy helps a lot, right? Getting aligned to where we want to go together. And so, doing those things intentionally, putting process policies, governing those kind of things in the right way, not too heavy-handed, but at least, putting some guardrails around it to make sure that we're making sense of things and also that, we're doing things that are actually valuable and useful instead of just trying random things that may not ever go anywhere, right? Not that experimentation is bad, but eventually we want to have some kind of purpose that we're shooting for. And so as you start breaking down these silos, it's really let's not just break down the silos for the sake of breaking down the silos, but for the purpose of being more effective and collaborating better and be able to understand each other across the organization. And it's a lot of I sort of go back to some of the stuff with Patrick Lencioni and organizational health trumps everything. And organizational health happens when you have those silos that are gone in the right areas so that we can collaborate and communicate and really be effective at understanding each other and our goals and the bigger picture of what we're doing together rather than operating in a silo where we optimize for the local needs, right? We want the global
Right.
perspective on that kind of stuff. So,
Right. And like we talked about before too, this is the opportunity for every individual in the organization to help break those silos because now everyone can be a strategic thinker and a builder,
yeah.
right? So whatever your domain expertise is, this is your opportunity to figure out how you can leverage AI to do things faster, better, and cheaper.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's going to become a different world here very fast. And part of it is like a lot of us grew up in the very traditional environment, very functionally siloed, very top-down driven, hierarchical kind of thing. And we've been battling that in the agile world for 20 some years, really trying to redesign the organization for that purpose. But you're going to get to the point here pretty quickly where people just start to wonder, why was it ever that way? How could you have operated that way? And that leads us into some thinking about what our next episode is going to be about. Which is that the next generations that are impacted by AI, because they're going to come into this situation thinking about things totally differently because they've never had some of the challenges that we're talking about here about traditional organizations. So, So with that, great conversation here about breaking down silos and just a little bit of a preview for our next episode, which is the next generations that are impacted by AI. So with that, thanks for tuning in and we'll see you next time.
Hi, thanks for listening. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming episodes. And drop a comment with topics or questions you'd like us to cover. Thank you. See you later.